Please be seated.
អង្គ
The court is now back in session. And good afternoon again, Mr. Sao Sarun. Are you ready? Sao Sarun, yes, I am ready. President, thank you. And again, I'd like to hand the floor to the International Court Prosecutor to put further questions to the witness. You may proceed.
Sir, Mr. Sao Sarun, after the death of Ling and you took over his duties, were you ever criticized by the center, by Pol Pot or Nun Chia or any of the center about how you did the job?
I'd like to respond to your question. After the death of Talang, I was appointed to replace him. I was instructed to manage the people well and to manage their living condition well so that they would not have any starvation or shortage of food. And that we had to engage in the progress of the agricultural production since our country had peace, so that the people should not face any starvation or a lack of food at all.
Okay, sir, thank you. You didn't answer my question. Now, let me ask you to try to listen to it, because I'm sure you want to finish tomorrow, and we want to finish with you, if possible. So please answer the question. So the question again is, did Pol Pot, Nun Chia ever criticize you for how you did your job after you took over from Liang?
Please repeat your question, and please make your question short, as I cannot recall a longer question.
Sir, did Pol Pot ever criticize you?
No, I was not criticized. However, I received advice and instructions. And let me remind you that I was in that position for only 2 months.
Thank you, sir. But the evidence shows clearly you were in that position for over a year, because you told us you were appointed when Chun was still alive. So let me move on. I don't want to argue with you about that. Sir, did sorry, wait a moment, I've forgotten my question. Let me move on. Let me go to the 1975 when you were asked by Pol Pot to take over that position. You testified previously that you told him you were not qualified. You asked him not to appoint you. Was there any reason you didn't want to take that position?
After the death of Talang, I didn't want to take that position because of my limited education, and I didn't want to take the responsibility of working at the sector, and that somebody else should take that place. Then I still refused to get that position until the time the conference was held, that when a majority opinion adopted a decision that I was to be appointed, and I was there for 2 months.
So the fact that Pol Pot asked you to take the position in 1977 after the death of Liang, and your position was confirmed in September 1978, did you understand that to mean that the center, the party center, was happy with how you were doing your job up until that time, up until September?
Yes, I discussed the matter that I didn't want to be in that position due to my limited knowledge and capability.
មានការតែងតាំង
And only later on, when I was appointed after the end of the conference that was held in September, I was in that position for 2 months. That is from October of that year. So October, November, December, and then the country was liberated.
Sir, going back to that first meeting with Pol Pot after the death of Liang, when you went there with Chun, you said that when you told Pol Pot you weren't qualified, he said you would be assisted by Ta San, the commander of Division 920. That's what you've testified to previously. Did Pol Pot explain how the commander of Division 920 would help you do the job in the sector?
Yes, that is correct. Pol Pot instructed Division 920 to assist me due to my limited knowledge and ability. And as I said, I refused to take up that position until the conference adopted its decision.
Sir, how did the military, Division 920, help you do your job?
It's to deal with education and the opening of the schools for all the cadres within the sector.
The military opened the schools? My question is, sir, how did the military, Ta San, commander of Division 920, help you do your job? Are you saying he taught school?
The education was to equip the stands to those people to lead or those cadres to lead the people in working, that is to work in the rice fields and plantation, for example, and for them to have sufficient food. So the main focus was on the economics and welfares.
Was the military involved in that?
Please, I don't get your question. Please repeat it.
Let me move on because of time. Sir, what did Pol Pot tell you, and Nun Chia, what did they tell you about the Vietnamese?
They said that Vietnamese has the intention to invade and swallow Cambodian territory. That what was specifically stated by them.
Did they talk about that in the meeting that you went to 3 or 4 months after the death of Liang? You said you went to a meeting, and at that meeting, Khieu Samphan was also present. Did they discuss the Vietnamese intention to invade at that meeting?
Yes. They told me about that, and I myself witnessed the invasions along the border as well.
Did they also discuss with you at this meeting with Khieu Samphan, Nuon Chea, Son Sann, and Pol Pot, Khmer Rouge incursions into Vietnam? Attacks by the Khmer Rouge into Vietnam?
Yes, they did. And that we had to prepare ourselves to counter them.
Did they explain about Khmer Rouge forces committing atrocities inside Vietnam against civilians?
No, I did not understand about the nature of that event. I did not know about the troops incurring or making an invasion into Vietnam.
Let me see if I can refresh your recollection if I read to you from a book authored by Khieu Samphan, that's E3/18. In Khmer, the ERN is 0010388849. In French, 005954446. In English, it's on page 73. And Khieu Samphan writes, "This is how I learned of the Cambodian attacks on Tin Bien village in An Giang province at the end of April 1977. The Vietnamese responded to these attacks using A-37 strike aircraft left by the Americans after the war. These counterattacks were followed by even bloodier Cambodian incursions at the end of September in Vietnamese villages in Tay Ninh and Ha Tieng provinces. Of course, any act of barbarism from whatever side it comes is loathsome and must be strongly condemned. And the events recounted are irrefutable. There is no doubt that the Khmer Rouge made forays into Vietnamese villages along the border, committing appalling crimes against Vietnamese civilians." So here Khieu Samphan is talking about attacks in April and in September 1977. You were called to Phnom Penh, you said, after the death of Liang in late 1977. Did they talk about these attacks? Do you remember anything about it?
Witness, please hold on. And Councillor Copper, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I object to this question. First of all, Mr. Khieu Samphan is citing Nayan Chanda and is not citing something from contemporaneous DK documents. Secondly, the question is outside the scope of not only the closing order but also this trial. And thirdly, and maybe even more importantly, Hattin and the provinces mentioned there by Chanda are very far away from Mondulkiri and Ratanakiri. This witness has most likely a geographical limit in his knowledge, and the provinces discussed there by Chanda are provinces which are very far away from Mondulkiri and Ratanakiri.
Once again, this is a book by Q Sampan.
អត់ទាន់កំពុងមានមុននេះ
International co-prosecutor, please hold on, and I'd like to give the floor now to Kyo Sampon's defense.
Oui, merci.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And to add to my colleague's objection, it's not because there's a book written by Kyo Sampon that we have to remove the quote from its context. As I did during the document hearing, I reminded you under which circumstances certain events were recalled. And here, again, when a posteriori Kyo Sampon makes quotes or speaks about events he received explanations afterwards, we cannot present this as contemporary events to democratic Kampuchea.
Your Honors, this is a book by Q Sampan, who was the head of state of democratic Kampuchea, who remained loyal to the Khmer Rouge for many, many years afterwards. And he's writing about the events that happened. He was, as this witness testified, in a meeting discussing the Vietnamese and the situation. So it's clearly relevant, and I understand why the defense is objecting, because Q Sampan here says it's irrefutable that the Khmer Rouge committed atrocities against civilians. But that's relevant to their policies towards Vietnamese and to the Vietnamese they found within the borders of Cambodia.
Simplement.
Mr. President, so that I may be complete about this, the question is not what Kyo Sampao said when he wrote his book. The question is to know what he would have said when these events took place. And the witness indicated that he was not made aware of the alleged incursions into Vietnam by the DK forces. So the fact of saying that Kyo Sampao wrote a book X amount of years after the facts does not correspond to the reality between 1975 and 1979, and presenting these events as statements by Kyo Sampao as head of state does not correspond at all to the reality. Here we're speaking about Kyo Sampao X years after the events, who, after having conducted some research, speaks a posteriori about certain events and not when these events occurred. So, and this is an erroneous way of presenting the facts to the witness, and of course this could lead or induce the witness into error, because presenting statements that were made a posteriori and presenting them as contemporaneous is something that should not be done. The question is not whether Kyo Sampao wrote the book or not. The question is when he made the statement, and based on the information that he received after the events.
បាទអរ
President, I'd like to hand the floor to Judge Levens to issue an oral ruling through the objection raised by the defense teams to the last question put by the international co-prosecutor to witness Sao Sarun. Judge Levens, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The chamber would like the co-prosecutor to rephrase his question insofar that Que Sampan's book was written years after the fall of decay. It's not possible to conclude from this book right now that Que Sampan was aware of the decay incursions into Vietnam. So, if you could please rephrase that question, that might be helpful.
Sir, my question was, I read from this book where Khieu Samphan talked about attacks into Vietnamese villages in April and September 1977. I'm simply asking if that refreshes your recollection. Do you recall any discussion of Khmer Rouge incursions into Vietnam in 1977?
President, Mr. Witness, have you heard the question put to you? Witness, no. And I'd like to request that the question shall be short. President and Mr. Sasaron, please listen to the question carefully, and international co-prosecutor, please repeat the last question.
Sir, I'm going to ask you another question. Did Pol Pot ever talk about hating Vietnamese?
But
He didn't hate the Vietnamese people, but he hated the invading Vietnamese or Vietnamese invaders into Cambodian territory.
Okay, sir, let me read from, again, this book by Tet Sambat and Gina Chong, E3/4202. And there's a quote in Khmer, it's on ERN 00858-265, in French 00849-385, and in English it's on page 51 at the bottom. It says, quote, "I hated Vietnamese youth from the time I was young," unquote. Pol Pot told Nguyen Chia. "I did not like them because the Vietnamese were rude and too clever at playing unfair tricks while playing football against me and other Cambodian children." Do you recall, after hearing that Pol Pot ever discussed the fact that he thought Vietnamese were tricky and he hated them for that?
No, I did not hear that.
You told us you joined the Khmer Rouge in 1968. From 1968 through the early 1970s, did you work with communist Vietnamese troops inside Cambodia? Were they your allies?
អត់បានធ្វើទេ
Answer. I was at the district. Nothing happened about the matter you raised.
My question is, in your fight against Lon Nol forces, were you allied with Vietnamese communist forces inside Mondulkiri?
Answer. Yes, we worked together with the Vietnamese troops to fight against the American troops.
Did Nun Chia ever discuss with you his years in Vietnam?
Answer. I do not know whether such a discussion did happen.
Let me move on, sir, and ask you about the September 1978 meeting that you attended in Phnom Penh. You said that at that meeting, Pol Pot asked you to read a confession that implicated you, Ta Un, and Myang. Is that correct?
Answer. That is correct.
Did Pol Pot indicate where this person was when they confessed?
Answer. We do not know where the confessions were from. We saw the confession in the books, and those confessions were handed over to us.
Was the confession true? What it said about you?
I do not know whether it was true or not, but that confession implicated me as well. Pol Pot handed over the confession or the book to me as well. My name was implicated. Those who confessed said whatever they wanted to say.
When you say you were implicated, do you mean that you were named as part of a group or a string that was opposed to the party?
Answer. The confession included almost all the cadres, but we had to come to clarify about the accusation that we betray or we committed treason against the nation. So the confession in the document was not true.
Had anyone ever tried to recruit you to a plot against the leadership of the CPK?
No, I never heard that.
Did Pol Pot explain why he was showing this to you?
In fact, there was a confession, but nothing happened to me.
Is that because Pol Pot told you that confessions were not reliable and he didn't believe them?
To my observation, Pol Pot did not believe in those confessions. Those who confessed overstated the facts. The confessions were unsubstantiated and unreliable when we read the confession. So we were handed over those confessions and we were asked to read and examine what was in it.
So did Pol Pot indicate that he knew that people were being implicated, arrested, and killed who were not guilty because they'd been implicated in confessions?
I do not know about this issue.
Well, let me read to you from what someone else said about Pol Pot, what he said about confessions. Again, this is from E34202, the book by Gina Chon and Tet Sambat. French, the ERN is 00849-450. In Khmer, 00858-362. And in English, it's on page 119. The book says that Mon Nim, a division commander under the control of Defense Minister Sun Sen and Pol Pot, said in an interview that when Khmer Rouge commander Heng Samrin fled to Vietnam, he was ordered to kill more than 670 soldiers from Heng Samrin's division. But he refused to obey the order by Khe Pok, who asked why they should be kept. Later, Pol Pot invited top cadre and military commanders to a meeting. He asked that the people not be split between the old and the new, those who were living in the cities and in the countryside, which surprised Mom Nim. Pol Pot also accused leaders of betraying the movement and killing too many people. He blamed Sun Sen and Khe Pok for what happened in the crackdown on the Eastern Zone. Quote, Comrade Sun Sen and Khe Pok killed many people and buried them with a bulldozer. I know this information through my spies, Pol Pot said. You betrayed people and made people leave the country to join with Vietnam. You have to correct yourself from now on, unquote. Pol Pot went on to say that some people accused of being part of the CIA or KGB were actually innocent and only confessed because they were tortured. Some confessed to being part of the CIA before they were born, he said. Did Pol Pot ever indicate to you that he knew that confessions were unreliable because people had been tortured in order to obtain them?
I was not told about this issue.
Did Pol Pot ever acknowledge in your presence that too many people had been killed by the Khmer Rouge?
I have never heard of that.
Sir, I just want to go real quickly to SOT. You talked about the labor, the importance in your job of organizing labor. Do you recall SOT, who was in charge of organizing labor and for things like building the dam?
What is the name again? I could not get it.
Sot. Sot, younger brother of Sophia.
Squall.
Answer. I know this person, Sot, not Sok.
You. Now, we discussed 4 years ago when you testified, a telegram, E3/156, from the 1st of January, from April, 23rd of April, 1978. Do you remember in that telegram you asked Pol Pot what to do with Sot, who'd been implicated in the confession of Chun? Do you remember sending that telegram to Pol Pot?
Answer. I could recall that during Talang's control, Sot was accused of committing immoral acts with a lady, and he was also accused of treason. And later on, when I met Sot, it was not true. So I sent a telegram to Pol Pot, and Pol Pot was implicated, and I asked Pol Pot to give pardons to Sot. He was accused of having relationship with a lady. In fact, Sot was already married. So I sought pardon from Pol Pot.
Sir, a witness testified yesterday and this morning named Bun Long Choi, who said he came from the same village as Sot and knew him well. He said that after Sot was accused of this immoral affair with the woman, he was arrested and never seen again. Is that correct? Did you receive an order from Pol Pot about what to do with Sot?
Answer. He was freed at the time. He had been accused of having affairs with a lady, and later on he was set free, but I did not know later on what was going on, but I remember that he was freed.
Your Honor, I understand from the civil parties that they require 20 minutes. I don't know if it's possible to extend. Well, I'll hand it over to the civil parties at this time. Civil parties have just informed me that I can take their time, so I'll proceed for the next 15 minutes or so. Sir, I want to ask you about a telegram also discussed previously on 7 June 2012. You were questioned about a telegram E3/248. This is dated the 1st of January 1978. And at about 10:08, they asked you some questions and read to you from the telegram. The first paragraph of the telegram said, "We would like to report 9 Yuan fleeing from their country." According to their interrogations, they said the Yuan had assigned them to come to spy inside Kampuchea and live with the Kampuchean people in order to grasp the Kampuchean people. Now we have swept them away. Now, Mr. Witness, when you wrote in the telegram you have swept them away, that means that they were killed, correct?
Answer, that is not correct. I answered this question already. I did not know what was implemented when Talang was in the region, and I do not know about the arrest of Yuan.
Sir, it's your name on this telegram. It's dated January 1st, 1978, after the death of Liang. Well, let me just ask you this question. The words, "we have swept them away," do you understand that to mean that the people were killed?
Answer, I do not really understand about the killings of Yuan. I never made any report about the killings of Yuan.
Sir, let me ask you the question again. The words, "we have swept them away," do you understand that to mean that the people were killed?
I do not understand that.
This telegram was dated 1st of January 1978. Did you ever receive any reaction? It was addressed to Office 870. Did you receive any reaction from Office 870 to the telegram?
Answer, I do not know about that.
Mr. Witness, is it the case that you don't know anything about killings? Are you telling the court that you don't know anything about killings after the death of Liang until the arrival of the Vietnamese?
President, please hold on. Mr. Witness, you have the floor. Counsel on the IBC.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like the document that the co-prosecutor has mentioned regarding the French version. I would like him to clarify what he meant by dung. I understood that the prosecutor meant Office 870. If that is the case, he should clarify that, because in the French version I see the word dung.
Actually, I don't have the telegram with me right now, but what I was reading was from the transcript of the 7th of June, 2012. And I think I did say Office 870 in my question. I asked the witness if he had any reaction from Office 870 to this telegram, which was addressed to respected and beloved brothers of M870 and signed Saroon. Sir, did Office 870 ever respond to this telegram?
Answer, never. I never asked any reaction from 870.
Well, you reported regularly to 870, correct? All the important matters going on in the sector. That was your job, to tell them what was going on. Isn't that correct?
Answer, that is correct, because 870 was my superior, so I had to make the report on a daily basis, and on a monthly basis the report was submitted to 870.
How often would 870 send you telegrams?
I do not know how many times I receive the reports or telegrams from 870. Sometimes it happened once a month, and a telegram would be sent to me when the situation changed.
So on average, would you receive it once a week? How often would you receive telegrams on average?
Answer, sometimes I receive a telegrams once a month or 2 times per month. It depended on the situation. Sometimes I never received any telegrams in one particular month.
Did you ever receive any telegrams criticizing you for arresting someone, or criticizing the sector for arresting or killing anyone?
Answer, never. Since I never committed any crimes, namely arresting people to be killed, and I was there for 2 months, no one criticized me about that issue. I personally never committed such acts.
Who were the people that helped you in the sector office, the staff?
Answer, no one, I believe. There were combatants, ordinary combatants assisting me, and I worked without any assistance. No one helped me in my work.
Do you recall that Tin was replaced by Ta Loi as chief of the K-17 office?
You mean Tatin?
Ta Tin?
I am not quite sure. So could you repeat your question?
Do you remember Ta Loi, who replaced Tin?
Answer, I know Taloi and Tatin. Tatin was the chief of the office, and Loi was member of Case 17.
Was his name Vin Loi?
That is correct.
What happened to him?
Answer, I do not know what happened to him.
Did he continue to work for you until the Vietnamese arrived?
Could you repeat your question?
Did Ta Loi continue to work in K-17 until the Vietnamese arrived?
Answer, yes, he remained working since the time of Da Lang, and Tatin, as I said, was the chief of that office, and Lowy was the member, so he remained working.
Well, let me remind you of something, or see if I can refresh your recollection. Sir, we have lists of prisoners at S21, E3/2251, and E3/1651. And they show that Vin Loy, who is chief of the office of Sector 105, entered S21 on the 20th of October, 1978. So, sir, he couldn't have continued to work for you until the Vietnamese arrived. Can you tell us why you haven't told us that Vin Loy disappeared?
Answer. At the time, Tasan, who was part of the division, may have arrested. I was in the district, and I do not know whether Tasan sent him to another location. I do not know about that.
Sir, there are records of many people from Sector 105 Commerce Office, from Division 920 and other parts of Sector 105 being sent to S21 in 1978. How did they get sent there? What was the procedure to have these people transferred to Phnom Penh?
Answer. I do not know about the implementation of measure applied by the division. I do not know about that.
Do you know how people were transported?
Answer. All I know is that people were transported on a vehicle or vehicles and was sent toward Karachi, and after that they may have been on boats. I do not know. As I said, at the time I was at the district.
Well, let me go back quickly to when you first were asked by Pol Pot to take over for Lieng. You testified 4 years ago that you would only go to the office about 2 times a week. Was that because the office was being used to hold prisoners?
Answer. I was not yet in charge of that office. I went to assist work there once a week, or sometimes I spend 1 or 2 days there to assist the work. I do not know why the prisoners were kept at that location. Talang was the one who was in charge of arrests and tidying up the prisoners. And prisoners, some of them were released. I noticed that there were not many prisoners, 3 or 4 of them. That was my observation. I am not telling lies.
Sir, 2 of those who were held in that office testified, and they said there were about 80 people, including children. Did you see children among those being detained?
Answer. No, I did not see any children. After my replacement, I did not see any children, but 3 or 4 male prisoners.
Sir, was the K-17 office being used to detain people because the prison detention center, Phnom Kraw K11, was full?
Answer: I do not know about that. While I was working, I never saw people detained at K17. As I said, there were only 3 or 4 prisoners detained at that office, not more than that.
Let me summarize what you've told us this afternoon. You were asked personally by Pol Pot to take over after the death of Liang. You loyally fulfilled the policies of Pol Pot and the CPK, and that you never received any criticism from them for how you did that job. Is that correct?
Answer: that is correct.
Thank you, Mr. President.
President, it is now time for the adjournment, and the Chamber will resume its hearing tomorrow on Wednesday, 30th March 2016 at 9 a.m. Tomorrow, the Chamber will continue hearing witness Sao Sarun via video link, and then start to hear to TCW 1016 in relation to Phnom Kraw Security Center. Please be informed and please be on time. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sao Sarun. The hearing of your testimony as a witness has not come to an end yet. You are therefore invited to provide your testimony via video link tomorrow once again at 9 a.m. I'm grateful to you, Mr. Mương Sawan, the duty counsel. You may be accused. You are also invited to assist Mr. Sao Sarun via video link as well at that location tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you, Mr. Nyam Somnang, staff of TPO, said the President. Thank you for assisting the witness while he is testifying via video link. You may also be accused. See you all again tomorrow at 9 a.m. Security personnel are instructed to bring the 2 accused, Kieu Sampon and Nuon Chea, back to the ECCC's detention facility and have them returned into the courtroom tomorrow before 9 a.m. The court is now adjourned.